Hello and welcome back to the Long Island Railroad Montauk branch and my very first layout update. I've discovered that the reason people do layout updates is because they're easy, certainly much easier than doing an operations session. So the first thing I want to talk about is this lovely Alco S1. I got it off of eBay. It is a lifelike Proto 2000 model. It came as Santa Fe, but I repainted it as Long Island Railroad, obviously, as S1 number 421. I painted it as 421 because I have clear photographic evidence of it being used at Long Island City to service the car float. This picture also shows the reach car that I model, including a large crew cabin. But I did not model that cabin because I have other pictures that show it without the cabin and just didn't feel like putting it there. It looks kind of odd, if you ask me. It's currently DC only, so it's operating on my alternate layout. As you can see, it has very smooth, slow speed performance. I put in an old Digitrax non-sound decoder and used it on my other layout just to test it out, and it worked just fine. But I'm waiting for Soundtrax to come out with a Android version of their Blue Nami decoder, because that looks really nice. I'd really like to get one of those, so I hope they do. And next on the update agenda is I did a little studying, a little research on float bridges and aprons and whatnot, and discovered some historic pictures that showed that in many cases, like at the Greenville Yard, so I assume since this connected with the Greenville Yard, they did it the same way on the Long Island Railroad, is that they used these little machines right here to actually tighten the car float to the apron. Now you see the way it works. Here, let me get a close-up. And this is my best approximation. This isn't exactly how it looks, of course. Is they had these little rings that went over these hooks that are on the car float, and a little bit of rope attached to this screw mechanism, which is turned by this wheel right here. Turn the wheel, it pulls the screw in and tightens the rope and pulls the car float tight against the apron, which I found is very interesting. And since I like, call me an idiot, I like making little things out of styrene, little detail parts. I think it's fun. I made two of those. There's one on each side. You can just barely see the other one right here. And I also, kind of a funny story, my robot vacuum cleaner pulled a thread out of a rug we have down here in the basement. And it turns out that thread is perfect for making rope. So I collected the thread and stretched it out and tried to get all the little curlies out of it, and I used that to make that rope right there. And also I updated the rope line. In nautical terms, this is a line for the actual, these lines here, which weren't necessarily used to hold the car float to the apron, just kind of to pull it into place. Now I also found that these lines were often connected to windlasses that lived back here, but I really don't have enough room to put those in. So I figured I was content with having these just hand tied and using these things to actually tighten the float to the apron. Here's the historic photo I was talking about. It was taken at Greenville Yard in, I think, 1949. You can see right here the tightening mechanism that I modeled, and right here shows the winching mechanism that I did not model. And here's a small little detail that I made up. These identification placards for either side of the car float. It's just a tiny little detail, but no detail that adds realism is too tiny. So it's made out of styrene, and the decals are from Island Model Works, which was recommended to me in a comment. Thank you very much. They make a whole bunch of decals for railroads that run on Long Island. I also used their decals on the S1 that I showed you earlier. Here's the picture that I based the placard off of. I chose number 19 because the decal sheet that I had actually had a 1 and a 9 next to each other, which made it a lot easier to cut out and put on the model. And here's something that I'm actually working on as we speak. I've always had this little indent thing right here that sticks out. I don't know why I did it, just for interest. Instead of having, a flat wall for 6 feet or however long it is, I decided to just stick this indent out. But anyway, it suddenly came to me, this would be a perfect place for an abandoned coal dock, because back in the old days, the tugboats would run on coal, just like the engines. So they'd have coal docks just like engines. This one burned down, and it absolutely was not insurance fraud. For a building that had outlived its usefulness. It was a pile of oily rags. That's what it was. It was spontaneous combustion from a pile of oily rags. So I started building it, and after experimenting with paint and cutting and stuff, I discovered that nothing looks like burnt wood as much as burnt wood. So I took a bunch of wood and craft wood and some balsa wood and stuff, and built a bonfire and burnt it. And that's what all this stuff is. That see, the tower part is where the lift used to be, obviously, and it all fell into the tower part. And I still have to vacuum up some of this stuff. This is what I just did, was add this grass. And all the usable wood and metal was salvaged, and they just left the crap. And this is where the coal pile was. You can see there's also a little kind of tunnel right underneath, so the tunnel or the coal would go in here, get loaded off of the track over here, go into the pile and get brought up and get eventually dumped into the tugboat. Now my tugboat, which is currently over here on top of a building, the Metoax was one of the first diesel-powered tugboats that the Long Island Railroad bought, so it did not need the coaling facility. So it was a little iffy when I first started making it. I wasn't sure it was going to work out, but I think it's going to be okay. And next on the hit parade are these dumpsters. I built 4 of them because, like I mentioned earlier, I like making little things out of styrene. These are based on a picture that I saw, cue picture. And here's another one. That picture was from 1940, so these dumpsters are a little old for my layout, but I figured as long as it still worked, they'd still use them. The Dempster dumpster story is kind of interesting if you're into refuse handling. The way these things worked is also neat. I mean, you should watch a video. The doors to fill it are on the side on this particular model, and I don't know how easy it is to see, but there's a triangular indent right there, and what happens is they'd lift it up by these little lifting places, lifting attachments, and then somehow they'd secure the top part and then lower the bottom, and this whole part hinges from like right here, and it all dumps out on the bottom, and then they pick it back up and redeliver it. So it's pretty neat. I may have a unhealthy interest in dumpsters because I remember when I was a kid, growing up in Navy housing in Hawaii, there was one of these at the end of the cul-de-sac where we lived, and I probably spent more time inside one of these dumpsters than was healthy. So there you go, a story from my past. And there's another one, just showing you all of them. They're all pretty, well, they're all exactly the same, except for the painting is a little different on each. And there's number 4, hiding behind the trees. That one's the least rusted of all of them, I think. And then I got this NC EB1 circuit breaker, based on, watching Larry Puckett it seemed like something that I could probably use on my layout. Works fine. And then finally, Conductor John would like to draw your attention to these new cars that I just got when I got the EB1. I got it all. Little shout out to Yankee Dabbler, whose service is outstanding. I ordered this stuff on Friday and got it on Monday. Pretty unbelievable. Certain other places I might have waited 2 weeks to get it. So anyway, this is a Great Northern hopper, obviously. This is a Bowser model. I like Bowser. I think they probably provide the best value for money of all the pre-built kits, or pre-built, fully assembled cars. Unlike this one, which is an Atlas kit. I like the Atlas kits. They go together pretty easily, and they look fine. And they're cheap. So they do provide good value for money as well. Although they're certainly not, the detail isn't there like it is in the Bowser model. So just got them, still need to be weathered, obviously. But there you go. One other thing I wanted to mention was I finally got my wife a new computer, so I got her old computer and set up JMRI on it and attached it to my command station, the DCS-52, with the USB cable in order to be able to use JMRI to program my decoders. Most people don't know, or I don't know if they do or not, but the DCS-52 does not have the inherent capability to do the indexed CVs. So when I bought it, if you'd told me that, I wouldn't even have known what you're talking about. But now that I do know, and I have some indexed CVs that I think I'd like to fool with, I thought I would use the JMRI to do it. I read all the CVs just fine, but I can't write any. It says it's error 302, programmer in use. And yes, I looked it up. It is not any of the things it says it is. My remote throttle was not being used. There's enough. It's something different. I have a feeling it's just that the DCS-52 is not capable of doing it. It just doesn't play well with it. But if anyone has any ideas as to how that can be resolved, let me know in the comments, assuming anybody watches this video. All right, I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, and see you all next time.